Welcome to the Clutch Pearl podcast. I'm Noah Carter. I'm your host. We are missing the other part, or other piece, excuse me, to the Clutch Pearl podcast, and that's going to be a little bit more of a common theme as Grant has some work stuff to deal with, and so he's going to pop in every once in a while, but he's not going to be on here as much as he was last year. And I'm going to try to do this weekly and get it out. Today, we're going to go over some tiers, and that includes my post feast week top 25, and that is as of this morning, Wednesday morning, when I'm recording this. I'm also going to give us some Big Ten tiers, and then, of course, we're going to have the Flying Illini and Hog Heaven talk. Even though Grant's not here, I will still talk some Hog Heaven, especially since I got to see them in person on Thanksgiving Day, Illinois, and the Hogs, and I'm going to finish it up the Clutching Pearls segment. So let's go ahead and start it off with the post feast week top 25. Tier 1 is title contenders. I have 10 teams in this group. I have Kansas at 1, Tennessee at 2, Auburn at 3, Iowa State at 4, Marquette at 5, Gonzaga, excuse me, Alabama at 7, Illinois at 8, Kentucky at 9, and Duke at 10. I had Kentucky much higher before last night's loss to Clemson, but truthfully, I wasn't as big of a believer in them. Some other teams that I'm still not sure about, but right now they have to be there. Tennessee and Auburn. Auburn should have had a much tougher schedule than what they've had, but with the way the Maui fell, I think a lot of people said that was the best Maui we've had in a while. I actually beg to differ. Outside of Iowa State and Auburn, don't really feel like there was very many good teams there. So Auburn, outside of the Iowa State game, didn't really see anybody, as I'm not really sold on Memphis, who placed second in the tournament. Tough draw for Iowa State. They probably would have been in the title game if they would have been on the other side of the bracket. Marquette, I still have questions about their front court, but they are undefeated and they do have a big win over Purdue, so they got to be there. Duke, I still like a lot. I know they've struggled a little bit, and if Coach Shire can figure out that Cooper Flagg is his best player, not Con Knibble, things will go better for that team. They were my preseason number one, and they can get back there. Like I said, if they quit treating Con Knipple as if he's the future number one pick and go to Cooper Flagg, as they've had a couple losses that either was they didn't really draw up a play for Cooper, they just said, here, go try to get a bucket yourself, or they drew up a play for Con twice in one game. How do you not go to the future number one pick when you have a chance there to win a game? Alabama, I know they've had a couple tough losses, but they also have a win over Illinois. And both their tough losses were to very, very good teams. Uh, number, I'll get to it a little bit later, but number 12, Oregon, one of those teams. So I actually like them as the best team in the SEC, but I have some questions as Mark Sears has struggled so far this year. I know he's had a couple good games, but did not score against Illinois and took himself out of the game and wouldn't go back in. What kind of best player is that? That's my biggest question with that Alabama team. Gonzaga, they're good. They have had a loss, but very good. I think there like I said, there's 10 to 12 teams that can really do some damage this year, and I think the farther we go along in the season, the better we'll see some separation, and that title contender group will probably get down to 6 to 8 teams as opposed to 10. Tier 2, I have either hot or not starts. Probably won't stay here long, whether that be going up or going down. It's Purdue at 11. Not sold on this squad. I do like, though, that Coach Painter has went to playing TKR at the 5. I thought that was needed from the beginning, especially because last year when Edie was out, that's actually when TKR played his best basketball, being able to play the five. So it was really confusing that he wanted to play Will Burton, who now does not play at all. I didn't understand that. That's something you play around with in the preseason, not once the season starts. He was having trouble going away from the traditional big because when Daniel Jacobson was there, that kid was going to be a dog, but he's hurt now, so have to go away from that and go to TKR at the five. I really like what they're doing there, but Braden Smith hasn't been as good as he was last year, and so there's some questions there. But Fletcher Lawyer has been much better than he has been previously in his career. Oregon at 12, I mean, they won the Players Air Championship, so they got to be there. But I feel like they're later on in the season, they're going to be more back half top 25. I do think they're top 25, um, but I feel like they're going to go down. Baylor uh, have the talent, but lately Scott Drew has not shown us that he can rein that talent together. Not since he won that title with Davion Mitchell and the boys. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But I could see them jumping up in the title contender group. Oklahoma, uh, Porter Mosier's got a good squad, but I think once you see in Big 12 play, they're going to level out. I still have some questions about Jeremiah Fears as best player, and why he's coming off the bench doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But he lacks some strength. So in the brood of Big 12 play, when he faces some better guards guarding him, how's he going to react? But they're undefeated, so they got to be there. They're hot. Ole Miss, I really like this squad. 15 actually feels about right for me for them. Same with Arkansas at 16. Both teams are have a lot of veterans, also have a little bit of youth. They're well coached, even with the questions about Arkansas's coaching right now. So they're in good spots. Michigan State, Tom Izzo, I think, has finally found that groove. Playing Jackson Kohler, uh, coming into the year, he was kind of an afterthought. So seeing him take root, take control of this squad has been a really blessing and surprise, or blessing in disguise, excuse me, for this squad. Their backcourt though, they can't shoot threes. Jeremy Fears can't score from outside, or if he can, he just won't. He's playing like Ty Rodgers at point guard right now. So that's the biggest question because how are they going to hang with teams like Illinois and Purdue in the Big Ten that shoot a lot of threes and make a lot of threes? And then after them, the last team in this group is Houston at 18. They have easily title contender upside, but Milos Uzan, I wasn't sure about that ad in the offseason, and it's continued to take root. But really, they have three losses, and all three are to very good teams and close losses. So, not too worried about that squad right now. I expect them to rise. Tier three is my last group, and I think they belong in the top 25, but I just think they lack the talent some of the other teams. That's Florida. They do have a good squad, but I don't know. I'm not sure about Elijah Martin, second best player. Walter Clayton has been fantastic, though. Memphis at 20, they got to be in the top 25 after the Maui invite. Second place finish, but I do think that you're going to see them fall as the season goes on. Um, I think they're more of a 30 to 35 team, which is still a tournament team, but it's not a top four seed in the tournament. Pittsburgh, another team like Memphis. I, I'm not sure about them, but right now they are the third or fourth best team in the ACC, so it'll be interesting to see. Louisville played a very tough Tennessee team last night, but they've had a good run early. I really like what Chucky Hepburn is doing. He's really shown control of that squad. Kayshawn Pryor was a very big loss for them, though, so it'll be interesting to see how they perform without him. But I do think the ACC is a four, maybe five bid league this year, which is a big change from the past couple of years where it was really two teams, Duke and North Carolina, and then everybody else, had to really fight tooth and nail to find a way to get in. Michigan and Wisconsin, as you saw last night in Madison, those teams are really close together. Not sure why the AP had Wisconsin all the way up at number 11, other than the fact they were 8-0, but they beat a horrible Arizona team. Enough said there. They lost to Michigan last night. Danny Wolf is starting to figure it out in Dusty May's offense, which definitely benefits. It's kind of like a Brad Underwood offense. It really benefits one player more than others, and in most years. And Danny Wolf is that guy this year. 7 foot handling the ball is hard to stop, and that showed last night. And lastly, I have San Diego State at 25. I think this is a good squad. I think they can actually rise a little bit, but as saw in the Gonzaga game, they just lack a little bit of the talent, especially after losing Lamont Butler, who is by far their best defender. And this is a team under Brian Dutcher that really relies on defense. Next, we have the Big Ten tiers. And this is a reminder that even though there's 18 teams, there's still 4 double byes for the Big Ten tournament, but only 15 teams qualify. So there's going to be 3 teams left out. Tier 1, I have title contenders. There's only 2 teams, as I kind of mentioned earlier. Illinois and Purdue, for me, are just far and away better than everybody else. They shoot the 3 better. They take better shots. They're better coached. This is going to be yet another year where Matt Painter and Brad Underwood take control of this league. I have Illinois at 1 and Purdue at 2, honestly, because Illinois is the home team in the only game they played this year. So I truly could see them tying for the title, but with Illinois having the head-to-head win at home, as I expect them to take, Illinois is going to finish on top as of right now. Tier 2 is good, not great teams, but I think they'll contend for a double bye. As I mentioned, I felt like Oregon, Michigan State, Michigan, and Wisconsin are all 20 to 25 range teams. Could maybe sneak up to top 15, but I think as the season goes on, you're going to see them in the 20 to 30 range rankings, especially in ranking like Andy Katz's Power 36. So those teams are there. Also, I have Rutgers there. I really like the Dylan Harper. I still have some questions about Ace Bailey, especially his decision making. But any team with a player as good as Dylan Harper, especially the numbers putting up, they're going to contend for a double bye. But I do think they are a little bit behind the other group. I guess I could have made them their own tier, but I wasn't going to make an extra tier just for one team there, as they're kind of in between. So I see them kind of in that tier 2 group, but I do think they're a little bit behind, but they're by far above tier 3, which is talented, but will be lucky to receive a bye regardless. That is Maryland. I really love the Derek Queen and Julian Reese front court, but I do have questions again when they're playing teams like Illinois, Purdue, even Oregon, Michigan, teams that shoot the 3 well. What are they going to do? Iowa also in this group. They got a boost last night, beating Northwestern. I actually had them in this group, but I flipped them with Northwestern after last night. I do really like Northwestern's team, as I'll get into a little bit later, but it beat them head to head. So right now you're going to have to be ahead. But I think as Big Ten play goes along, I think they're just a little bit behind. I think they lack the talent of some of these other teams do. The Big Ten this year is very different from past years with the amount of youth it has in it. I think it's more of a how a lot of times the Big 12 has been, which is a lot of high upside guys. But it could go great. It could go south. I think Iowa is more of how the Big Ten normally is. So I see them as a middle of the pack team. Ohio State and Northwestern at 10 and 11. Iowa State has a lot of talent, but I'm just not sure about Jake Diebler as a coach. So we'll see how it goes, but there's a lot of questions for me with him. And Northwestern 11, Martinelli and Barnheiser. I actually really like Barnheiser coming into the season, but Nick Martinelli has really surprised me. But when you have two guys averaging 20 a game, that shows that you're a talented team, plain simple. It'll be interesting to see what happens Friday night because Barnheiser's going to have Colin Boswell guarding him, and Martinelli is going to have Trey White and probably, well, I don't know who guards him after Trey White. So Martinelli might get his, but Barnheiser's going to struggle, as we've seen with Boogie Fland at Arkansas, as we've seen with Mark Sears scoring 0 against Illinois. Kylan Boswell flat locks up the opposing team's best guard. They just don't perform well. They don't shoot it well. Kylan's shown he's a very good defender, as Brad Underwood talked about all year. So how's Northwestern gonna respond and have a chance at home against an Illinois team that has probably the best defender in the Big Ten? It's between Boswell and Ace Ball. Now tier 4. I think these teams will be tournament qualifying, but they're for sure hopefuls. And I tiered it as hopefuls because one of these teams is going to get left out. That's USC, Nebraska, UCLA, Indiana, and Penn State in that order. USC, I'm actually higher on than most. I really, really like St. Thomas. I like Des Claude. I like how Coach Eric Musselman is kind of using bigger guards. He's following the Brad Underwood kind of, I want bigger guards, athletic, and we'll see what happens of past couple years. Now, Underwood again has big guards, but he also has point guards this year. That's what Musselman lacks. And I think at times against teams like a Northwestern, like an Iowa, that aren't as athletic, I think they will really struggle with a team like USC. It'll also be interesting to see how USC does traveling across the country and how these other big teams do traveling across the country to USC. I think Coach Musselman's a good coach. He struggled last year, but I could see this team kind of finding their groove towards January and finding a way in the tournament. Most people are lower than them, but we'll see. Nebraska. I love Connor Siege. I think that kid can play. I think he's the perfect fit in a Fred Hoiberg offense. So I have them there. UCLA and Indiana, I'm going to group them together. These two teams have enough talent to be in tier 2, but I feel like they lack a motor. Uh, and so lacking that motor puts them in this group, but I do think their talent alone will probably find a way in the tournament. And I have Penn State at 16. That's the team I'm predicting it misses out, but they can find a way. Ace Baldwin is a really good player. I think they're well coached. So it'll be interesting to see as to what happens with this group. And lastly, I have tier 5. They're the bottom feeders. I feel like there's very little shot either one of these teams make the tournament. That's Washington and Minnesota. Washington about lost to a couple D2 schools. Minnesota has Dawson Garcia back, who's one of the best players in the Big Ten. But outside of him, there's nothing there. They don't have Cam Christie back as he went to the NBA, and that's a player that really, really helped them last year win some games that they probably shouldn't have won. I also think Ben Johnson is going to be on the hot seat. They're itching to win up there in Minnesota, and I don't see how they're going to do that this year. Next segment, we've got some flying illini and hog heaven talk. First of all, Kasparis Jakusionis. I think he's the most talented player Illinois maybe has ever had. That step back he hit on Big C was just incredible. I watched that in person. He probably had the quietest 23-point performance I've ever seen. I said that to my fiance at the game. We were there sitting about 15 rows behind the Arkansas bench, and I I don't know that I've ever seen a player like him. The way he passes, the way he shoots it, he's really finding his groove as a scorer on this Illinois team. As Kylan Boswell's kind of taken more of the point guard duties away from him, so there's less pressure to create and more opportunity for him to score. But late in that game, I mean, it was just unbelievable. He basically took the Iota Sunmu closer role, so to speak. He literally just called for a screen and then basically said, "Get out of the way," and he found a way to get buckets there late. That's where most of his points came from. And when you see a player like that, just you could see in his eyes he was going to score, and not every player has that. I think, and it's a little bit off topic, but Yegor Demine from BYU, that's what he lacks. I think he's just as talented, if not more talented, than KJ, and I say Yegor because that's a player that actually Illinois recruited first. I've been told from my sources that that actually was just a smokescreen to get KJ a little cheaper. That in NIL money wise, that KJ was always the target to begin with, but Yegor, he just lacks that dude to him, whereas KJ's got he's got that little crap to him. You know, he's gonna find a way to beat you, and that's what I love about KJ right now. I think he's gonna lead Illinois a long way, and their ceiling is undoubtable. As we get to number two, which is it's time to trust Underwood like we do the other big name coaches. I think he should be considered a big name. You know, Underwood, he has more roster turnover than anybody, but he's shown that he's going to win, especially now that he's got Antigua back. They're getting top end talent, and you get Brad Underwood top end talent. Good luck, uh, plain and simple. I mean, look at what he's found with KJ and Big T. You know, people were worried that they were going to be like UCLA was last year, relying on that overseas talent. Yeah, right. Underwood's a better coach than Mick Cronin. It's just amazing that people even doubted this. Uh, you know, some of the, I mean, he just flat out Coach Calipari um, in that Arkansas Illinois game, and it wasn't close. Everything that Underwood drew up, he was finding a way to beat them. He told his guards, get in the paint, shooters be ready. And were those shooters ready? And they got in the paint at will, setting high ball screens, dribble drive, handoffs, you name it. They were finding a way to get inside and get the ball out. And I was actually sitting by an Arkansas fan, and he said it. He was like, "This is crazy. Like, we want to stop the three, but if we stop the three, we're just giving them layups, you know, and there's no way to stop that." And I think that's credit to Coach Underwood. And also, he's got a top 10 defense right now. This is an insane offense. As good, if not better, than last year's offense. But instead of having about the 70th best defense in the country, he's got the ninth best defense in the country per KenPom. This ceiling of this team is a national title. Now, I said before the season the reason I had them ranked, I believe 19, it was because I didn't know. There was a lot of unknowns. It could be that this team could win a national title, and it could be that this team misses the tournament. Well, that floor has risen. This is at worst case the second best team in the Big Ten, at best case national title, and that's a top 15 team in the country, no doubt. And as they continue to rise, continue to get better as they have every game, your Coach Underwood's having a lot of fun, and as he should. This Illini roster as a whole, as I kind of mentioned, you know, the ceiling and floor, that combination you just don't see very often. Uh, so it's teams really Duke and Illinois are really similar, and I'm really really curious to watch this game at Madison Square Garden in February because these two teams are built very similar. Cooper Flag and KJ and Knipple and Big T. all these guys going at it. It's going to be fun to watch. I do think Knippel's going to struggle with Boswell. Uh, it'll be interesting to see how Illinois can guard Cooper Flag, though, because Malawak is going to be guarded by Big T. So see what Trey White's got, I guess, if he's still there. I also think that Will Riley could find himself in the starting lineup and be the guy guarding him. Will Riley also pleasant surprise defensively. Coming into the year, it was the scout on this kid was he's a pure scorer. He's going to get his, but not much else. Can't pass, can't defend. Well, those scouts were wrong. This kid can defend. He can pass. Now he's not a Kylan Boswell defender by any means, but he's a good enough defender to help Illinois get some steals, get some blocks. He finds a way to get rebounds, both offensively and defensively. He knows his role and he does it well, and that's something that not a lot of 5-star freshmen do. Uh, Coach Antigua, Coach Underwood, uh, those guys did an incredible job finding this kid and getting him to reclassify. Now to Hog Heaven. There's rumors flying out of Kentucky, of course, that Cal's practices are horrendously bad, worse than they ever were at Kentucky. Now, I just have a hard time believing this. I, you know, there's a reason that every year, including last year, it seems like Coach Cal has some guards as the top 3 pick. Because this year's draft's so deep, we're going to see Boogie Flan closer to 10 than 3, but he's going to have another one this year. And I think as we see SEC play out, everything's going to even out. He's going to be a top 3 or 4 team in the SEC, as was predicted before. I think most people had Auburn and Alabama ahead of them. I actually had Arkansas ahead of both teams. I was a little bit wrong on that. I think Alabama's the best team in the SEC, but right now with schedules and stuff, I have Auburn ranked ahead. But I think as the season plays out, we're going to see Alabama be the best team in the SEC. Probably Auburn 2, uh, Arkansas and Tennessee, and some fashion 3 and 4. Excuse me. So my panic meter on Arkansas, not high. I think this team is perfectly fine. I think they were lucky to get away from Miami with a win last night, but it is always tough to play at that place. And I think the longer the season goes out, we're going to find a way. We're finally that Miami game. We saw John L. Davis make some shots. He's finally getting healthy, finally getting comfortable, and that's big for that squad. So a question I had though was how did Boogie Fland respond after Boswell locked him down on Thanksgiving? He responded well last night. He played really, really well down the stretch. I feel like he almost saw what KJ did for Illinois, and I think Coach Cal kind of used that as an example and said, "Boogie, this is what you should do." Like I told the guy sitting beside me again, that Arkansas fan, I said, Boogie is one of my favorite players in college basketball. Illinois recruited him, didn't land him. I wanted him at Illinois. That was before we found KJ. Uh, he's a good player, and I mean, freshmen are going to have bad games. It's just the way it is. He was an Antigua recruit, turned into Cal somehow, still got him. But you know, Boogie can play, and if he figures out how to be that closer, watch out for this Arkansas squad. And I don't think the panic meter should be high yet. It is by a lot of Arkansas fans because how Coach Musselman finished his career there, it went a little sour. And then on top of that, there was a lot of excitement with Coach Cal coming. And it's it's a typical Cal team, At Kentucky, he did the same thing. He would lose games and early in the non-conference, fall around 20 to maybe out of the top 25. Then all of a sudden, as January comes around, his squad comes storming back. I expect the same thing from this squad this year. The question is, with more veteran talent than he had previously, can he make a deeper run in March compared to what he's done at Kentucky the past couple years with mostly freshmen. Lastly, we have the Clutching Pearls segment. You didn't think I was going to leave that out here on the Clutch Pearl podcast, did you? What has clutched my pearls this week? It had to be, or so far this season, I should say, had to be Dan Hurley whining about the officials, falling on the ground, saying he's never going to play in an MTE again. I love Dan Hurley. I think he's the best pure coach in college basketball. I do. I still stand by that. You don't win back to back titles for no reason. I don't care how good your talent is. Uh, because honestly, the first year he won the title, they were like a 4 or 5 seed. They nobody really predicted them to win. It was kind of out of nowhere. Uh, and they've curb stomped everyone in March. I don't think he has a team good enough to win it this year, but come on, Dan. Like, you're supposed to be the face of college basketball right now. I mean, the Lakers offered you 70 million over 6 years and you turned it down. And you're acting like that. It's bad for college basketball. Dan Hurley's acting like that. Somebody needs to get to him and tell him he's got to get his act together. I also think it should be added. It's an absolute disservice that the AP poll still has UConn ranked in the top 25 at 25. They lost to 3 unranked teams in Maui. They got last place in Maui, and you still have them as a top 25 team. I don't care what you thought of them before. They have too many questions. What happens at center? Harris Reed couldn't hardly crack the rotation on a Juwan Howard Michigan team the last 2 years, and you expect him to be the star center. Samson Johnson's horrible. He was horrible last year. He had a couple big dunks against Illinois and throughout the postseason last year, but not a guy that should be starting. Liam McNeely, if you take most of the teams in the top 25, Liam McNeely does not start for them. He can't defend. And I don't think there's any way to get him to defend. He's not a good defender. He's not laterally fast. He's not quick. So, there's questions there. And then you don't have a point guard. You expected Aiden Mahaney to be a point guard, and he wasn't a point guard at his previous stop. I think he's better as a two. Solomon Ball has not been as good as they thought he was going to be. He should have been a breakout candidate, and he's just not been. But either way, they have a bunch of guys that are combo guards. They kind of have the same questions that a lot of people had with Illinois last year. They don't really have a true point guard, and it really showed. And I do think he's going to turn it around. I mean, he did mention that, and he had a good point here. It's hard when you see things that go wrong in game one, when you have to turn around and play a game in about 12 hours, it's impossible to fix that. You don't have any practice time playing 3 games in 3 days. But to say you're never going to play an MTE again, uh, come on, Dan. Falling on the ground on a call you don't agree with, whining about the officials after the game. Uh, I it's he fits the UConn, kind of vibe. People love him there, and rightfully so. I love Dan Hurley. I think like I said, I think he's the best coach in college basketball. But he's got to quit acting like that. It's not good for basketball. It's not good for the face of basketball because he is the face of college basketball. I'm Noah Carter. Thank you for listening in. Glad to have you. Uh, we'll see you next time here on the Clutch Pro Podcast.